Hello, welcome to At Risk International's Global Risk Intelligence Team's weekly insight briefs. My name is Roman Fisher, Protective Intel Analyst here at Risk International. Getting started for you today. On Friday, husband of House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Paul Pelosi, was attacked and severely beaten after an assailant broke into their San Francisco home. The attacker was reportedly searching for Speaker Pelosi, repeatedly shouting, "Where's Nancy?" The speaker was in D.C. at the time of the assault. San Francisco police have identified the suspect as 42-year-old David DePop. According to an AP report, the Canadian-born DePop has a history of posting racist remarks, questioning the 2020 election results, defending former President Trump, and QAnon conspiracy theories. Additionally, recent blog posts believed to be authored by DePop contain rants about technology, aliens, communists, religious minorities, and global elites. He faces several felony charges, including attempted murder, assault with a deadly weapon, burglary, and elder abuse. Threats to public officials are now at an all-time high, and members of Congress have been advised to acquire and implement additional security measures. This incident has increased fears for many regarding political violence related to the upcoming midterm elections. The Department of Homeland Security and other federal agencies have warned that the greatest threat is from lone offenders, motivated by election-related grievances. In a recent DHS bulletin, the agency warns that domestic violent extremists would likely consider election infrastructure, personnel, and voters as attractive targets. The bulletin also warns that venues such as polling places, ballot drop box locations, voter registration sites, campaign events, and political party offices could be targeted. Now I will pass you over to Ross Hill, Director of Intelligence here at Risk International. Ross?
Thanks, Raymond. So on to an update for Ukraine. We've had further strikes on infrastructure in Ukraine today, October 31st. At least 50 missiles fired by Russia targeting power stations and water supply, and we're seeing blackouts and interruptions to water supply in various areas. Russia's attacks follow an attack on Russia's Black Sea Fleet in Crimea, where one ship was damaged in a drone attack over the weekend. Russia's claimed that UK Navy specialists have helped coordinate that attack, although that's been denied. And Ukraine also hasn't claimed responsibility for the attack, but that follows a pattern of several attacks in Crimea, believe where Ukraine is responsible, but they're not claiming that responsibility at the moment. Also, after that attack, Russia withdrew from a UN brokered deal to allow grain exports from Ukraine. Because of that, wheat and maize futures increased significantly in price in trading today on the stock market. That's threatened to push up food prices again. But we have seen Ukraine and Turkey still going ahead with grain exports, reportedly 12 ships leaving Ukrainian ports today. We just need to watch and see if there is any reduction in exports. The UN deal is actually set to expire on November the 19th, so we need to monitor what happens there. And we also need to see if Russia will reintroduce a blockade of Ukrainian ports. It doesn't appear to have done that yet, but Russia is trying to use the cost of living to kind of erode external support for Ukraine. So another blockade is a potential tactic there. Russia also said this week that it's ended its partial mobilization, that being completed. It seems like Russia is preparing for the war to continue well into 2023. In a speech last week, Vladimir Putin also blamed the West and NATO for the war, but he did claim in that speech that Russia did not need to use nuclear weapons, which is the first time in a while we've seen kind of Russia de-escalate that sort of narrative. All of these factors really indicate that a prolonged conflict remains the most likely scenario. Then for our final one today, we'll have protests in multiple cities worldwide on November the 5th as part of what's been called the Million Mask March. A few of those have actually been held over the past few years. The protesters are sort of loosely associated with the hacktivist group Anonymous, and characterized by wearing a Guy Fawkes style mask that you can see in the picture on the slide. Planned protests in Berlin, Brussels, Copenhagen, London, Milan, Washington, DC, Chicago, Dallas, Portland, a few other locations. Generally, the protests are anti-establishment, anti-government, and anti-elite, but they'll likely be about climate change and some other issues this year as well. These kinds of protests, you often get an amalgamation of issues. The narrative for the Million Mask March is often framed around a kind of revolution. Anybody that's seen the film or read the graphic novel of V for Vendetta will kind of get an idea of the protesters' sort of rhetoric and narrative. But I think attendance will vary in the different locations, and the largest will probably only be a few hundred protesters. In previous protests, we have seen a little bit of fighting between demonstrators and police, and that's quite likely to happen again. That's it from us today. Thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you again soon.